The Way Home just delivered the most devastating episode of its entire 4-season run. And I honestly do not think I am going to recover from it before the finale on Sunday. Because Auld Lang Syne did not just give us the explosion we have been waiting for since the beginning. It gave us everything that led to it. Every secret. Every choice. Every missed chance to stop what was always going to happen. And then it gave us Elliot on the ground in a tunnel bleeding, and Fern singing Auld Lang Syne upstairs while fireworks went off. And I genuinely had to sit in silence for several minutes before I could process any of it. Let's talk about everything. The 1979 detour that told us something crucial before they could get to 1925. What Danny confessed that reframes an entire season of threatening letters. What Alice discovered at the pond in 1979 that finally gave us Griffin. What Fern said to Tessa that is the most haunting thing this show has ever scripted. What Rita said about the explosion that changes the entire mythology. And everything that happened in that tunnel on New Year's Eve when Tessa fired her gun, because this episode deserves every single word. First, the pond, and the detour that the show needed to take before everything else could happen. Kat and Elliot jump in the pond intending to go to 1925. But they arrive in 1979 instead. They know they are not in 1925 because they see an older Fern. Not the young Fern they know from their previous visits. Fern mentions that Elliot makes a sacrifice in 1925 during the time of the explosion. They hide behind the house as Colton and Dell arrive in their truck. They exit the truck with a newborn baby. Kat and Elliot watch as Fern is introduced to Baby Cat. Fern smiles to herself and calls the baby Kitty Cat and begins to sing to her. And I want to stop on that image. Elliot standing behind that house watching Fern hold Baby Cat for the first time. Watching the nickname get coined by a woman who will still be using it decades later. Watching the beginning of a love story between a grandmother and a granddaughter that will eventually heal a family that has been fractured for 23 years. And Elliot, who is about to go to 1925 and put himself in the path of an explosion to save the mother who left him. Standing there watching someone else's family be whole in a way his never was. I honestly could not breathe through that scene. And Fern saying he makes a sacrifice. She knows. She has always known. Because Fern Landry lived through this night 100 years ago and has been carrying the weight of it in every single one of her scenes across this entire season. When Kat and Elliot return to the present Dell, tells them that Sam knows about the pond and explains his history with Casey. Jacob brings down the Lennistons and explains that someone else must know about the pond since Alice and Kat were edited out of the 1979 film. Dell tells them to stop jumping as things are getting too dangerous. And then, Danny. Jacob takes a closer look at the letters. Danny arrives at the house. Jacob points at the letters, and Danny reveals that he wrote them. He explains that he always blamed himself for Jacob's disappearance until he overheard Kat and Alice talking about Jacob being alive a few years back. He was upset that he became the scapegoat for Jacob's disappearance when the Landrys knew where he was. He did not write the letters to hurt them. He hoped they would encourage the Landrys to come clean to the town about where Jacob was. Danny. Quiet, kind, gentle Danny who Jacob used to dream of owning a farm with. Writing threatening letters in his kitchen on a typewriter. Not out of malice. Out of a grief he was never allowed to name. The grief of being blamed for something he did not do. While the people who knew the truth protected themselves and each other. And I honestly felt the justice and the sadness of that revelations simultaneously. Del's apology to Danny was one of the quietest and most important moments of the episode. And Jacob's proposal, equal partners on the Landry farm, is the most healing thing Jacob Landry has done since coming home. But before Jacob can share a celebratory beer with Danny, he notices a typewriter on the table and recognizes the font from the letters. He quickly rushes off. He already knew. He just confirmed it. And the fact that he left without confronting Danny in that moment, choosing to carry the knowledge quietly while the friendship continues. Is Jacob making the choice that Del has always made about protecting the people she loves, even when they have hurt her? Jacob is becoming a Landry in all the ways that matter. Now, Alice, in 1979, and the person she finds at the pond, Alice emerges from the pond in 1979 and is immediately caught by Griffin. He takes a picture of her on his film camera. He tells Alice that he had heard the pond was magical and that she just proved him right. She begs him not to tell Colton. Tessa appears holding baby Elliot, explaining that she was just out for a walk. Griffin snaps a picture of Alice standing alongside Tessa and baby Elliot. Griffin Landry, Colton's brother. The man this season introduced in the opening, flash forward, and then kept just out of reach for 9 episodes. And the first thing he does when he finds Alice at the pond is take a photograph. He knew about the pond before Alice arrived. He had heard it was magical. And the photograph he takes of Alice with Tessa and baby Elliot in 1979 is the photograph that will eventually be found in a box of Port Haven treasures in 2026. The photograph with the spliced film, the evidence that Evelyn eventually edited to hide what she saw. The circle closes completely. And I honestly think Griffin knowing about the pond is one of the most significant things this episode revealed. Tessa opens up to Alice about being overwhelmed with motherhood. She questions whether she is a good mother like Del. Alice tries to reassure her before Tessa rushes off, remembering Evelyn asked her to babysit Louis Tessa, doubting herself as a mother in 1979, asking whether she is as good as Del, while Elliot is upstairs in his crib, and the audience sitting with the knowledge of what Fern is about to say to her. This scene is one of the most emotionally precise things this show has ever done with Tessa's character, because she is not the woman who knocked her son unconscious in episode 6. She is a young mother at a New Year's Eve party in 1979, standing at a pond wondering if she is enough. And the tragedy is that she is asking the right question about 25 years too early. Vic notices Tessa wearing a new bracelet. Griffin reveals he gave it to her because it reminded him of a fairy tale Tessa talked about. Vic immediately grows angry. Colton breaks it up and demands Griffin leave. Griffin warns everyone that their relationships are hanging on by a thread, and that Colton does not seem to discourage Evelyn's crush on him. And now we understand something about 1979 that the show has been circling around all season. Griffin leaving that night, being pushed out by Colton, is the event that starts a chain reaction. Evelyn alone, Tessa under scrutiny, Vic increasingly distant, and Griffin out the door with photographs of a pond that proved magic is real. Whatever Griffin did after that night, whatever path he took toward 1883, it began here. On this New Year's Eve, with a bracelet and a fairy tale and a family that chose the wrong side of the tension, and then Fern suddenly comes downstairs and eerily says to Tessa, "This is how it begins, Coop, and I'll tell you how it ends. You're gonna kill your son." Alice rushes home. And I honestly sat with that line for a long time. Because Fern said this in 1979, she said it decades before it happened in 1925. Which means Fern did not just know about the explosion. She knew specifically what Tessa would do in that tunnel. She knew whose bullet would hit Elliot. She has been carrying that knowledge across multiple decades of her life. And she said it to Tessa's face in 1979 because she wanted Tessa to know what she was capable of, what she would do. And it did not change anything, because the past cannot be changed. This show has tried again and again. Now, 1925 and the party, and everything that unravels in the final 20 minutes of this episode. At Lingermore, Elliot and Kat overhear Grayson and Nate talking about the staged explosion planned for production. Elliot realizes they never mentioned to Tessa and Grayson that the explosion happens the night of the party. They panic the plan is going to fall apart. Elliot believes Tessa lied and is planning on settling things during the party, using it as a distraction to run one more job to settle her debt with Capone. Just before Elliot leaves, an undercover police officer recognizes him as Tom Buchanan and arrests him. He asks Kat to find Fern and stay safe. He is brought outside to Cliff and pleads his innocence. He warns Cliff that Tessa is in danger, and Cliff agrees to let him go and follows him from a distance. Kat finds Tessa, Mo, and Percy setting up for the job in the catacombs. She tries to warn them about the explosion, but Tessa claims she has her dates mixed up. Tessa disarms Kat and Percy holds her back. And now the Rita revelation, which changes the mythology of this show's central mystery in a way I was not prepared for. Del and Jacob are leaving the wine launch with Rita. She mentions she is disappointed she never got to pitch her idea to record a podcast episode in the catacombs about the tragic 1925 explosion, which she says resulted in so many deaths. Jacob immediately tries to confirm there was only one death, since the old song says 5 went in and 4 came out. Rita explains that the song means 4 of the bodies were identified and 1 was never found. Not 5 in and 1 died. 5 in, 4 bodies identified, 1 body never found. Tessa was not listed as dead in the historical record. She was listed as gone, as missing, as the one whose body was never recovered from that tunnel. Which means, and I need everyone to sit with this, Tessa's body was never found because Tessa did not die in that explosion. Her body was not there because she went somewhere else. And the only somewhere else in Port Haven with that kind of power is the pond. Jacob runs off because he understands what Rita just told him, and we understand it with him. At the party, Fern grows concerned about Cliff since he has not arrived for their midnight kiss. The 10-second countdown to the new year begins without him. Cliff begins to arrest them in the catacombs. Tessa pulls the gun she stole from Kat and points it at Cliff. Just as the partygoers celebrate, the New Year, Cliff's fellow officer screams at Tessa to put her gun down. She continues to point it toward Cliff, who is standing next to Kat. Concerned for Kat's safety, Elliot runs across to push Kat out of the way just as Tessa fires toward Cliff. The bullet strikes Elliot and he hits the ground. Fireworks go off at the party, and Fern begins to sing Auld Lang Syne Tessa fired at Cliff. And Elliot stepped in front of Kat, and the bullet that was meant for a police officer hit the son who spent 4 seasons searching for the mother who shot him. And Fern's prophecy from 1979 closes completely. You are going to kill your son. She did not mean murder. She meant this. This exact moment, this exact tunnel, this exact choice. Kat goes to treat Elliot, who is still conscious but bleeding at an alarming rate. Tessa puts the gun down and is detained by the police officer. Percy goes after Cliff, and they wrestle each other to the ground, knocking over a lamp. Cat grabs Elliot and pulls him down the tunnel. The fire from the lamp catches a trail of alcohol on the ground and reaches a box of dynamite. Everyone at the party gasps as a loud explosion is heard from a distance. Elliot shot. Cat dragging him into a tunnel, the fire catching, the dynamite, the explosion. And upstairs, Fern singing Auld Lang Syne while fireworks go off, and nobody knows yet what just happened in the catacombs below them. And the season 4 opening scene. The one that has been sitting at the beginning of this season like a question nobody could fully answer. The Landry women at the pond. Kat saying she wishes he could be here. Del saying he is here in spirit. And all of them walking toward a wedding. Every single person watching that scene on Sunday night understood what it meant. Elliot is not at that wedding. He is here in spirit because Elliot does not make it back from 1925, and yet 4 bodies were identified. 1 was never found. Tessa's body was never found because the pond took her somewhere. And Kat is in that tunnel right now with Elliot bleeding in her arms, and the pond is somewhere very close by. And this show has always believed that the pond has reasons. And I honestly believe that whatever happens in that tunnel in the series finale on Sunday, June 21, the pond is not done with the Augustine family yet. The series finale, Ahead by a Century, airs this Sunday, June 21 at 9 p.m. on Hallmark Channel. It is confirmed to be longer than a standard episode. Stream it the next day on Hallmark Plus. And if you have been watching this show from the very first pond jump, from the very first time a Landry woman came up gasping from the water into a decade that was not her own, then you already know that the pond always brings surprises. And I honestly think the surprise it has been saving for the final shot of this entire series is going to be the most beautiful thing it has ever done. Drop a comment and tell me, do you think Elliot survives? And now that we know Tessa's body was never found because she was never in that tunnel, do you think the pond takes her home? Because after everything this episode revealed, I honestly think Sunday is going to give us an ending we have been waiting for since the very beginning. And I am terrified that I am not ready for it.